I was super excited when I saw the pop-up on Netflix that there will be a documentation about Victoria Beckham. She is actually, or she has become one of my role models when it comes to elegance. And yeah, even though I might not always live up to that, I always have her in mind when I think about elegance and how to show up, and actually never did a real deep dive on her, but I had this kind of feeling that there's more to her than what we see on the outside and that there's a story to tell. But honestly, I didn't expect this to be the story, which I saw in the documentation. Super interesting. And with that, I want to share my personal top 3 takeaways from the show that you can adapt right now as well. Let's go in. Well, I might be a millennial, but I must say the Spice Girls era was a little before my time. They had their biggest hits, I think, when I was somewhere between 4 and 8. So yeah, I know the songs and I like the songs and they bring me in a mood and I feel this 90s vibe, but it's not the era that I really dived into them, that I really followed them. So they were just like existing. So the first time I came into contact with Victoria Beckham was when I watched the Beckham documentation about her husband 2 years ago. And she showed up and had something to say as well. She was interviewed as well. And I was like, at first I was like thinking, this is an interesting dynamic between those two, because honestly, when I watch Victoria and David, how they behave with each other, I think it looks genuine, cute and honest. And like they built this relationship for far over 20 years now. And they're still like cute. And I think that's a cute thing to think about my relationship in a few years. And also I was asking myself, how can a woman wearing a black hoodie, nothing fancy, look so elegant? How is this even possible? I was in the Beckham documentation. I remember I was seeing this and I was thinking, this can't be, like, how can this be? It left an impression on me. And since then, she's got me hooked in a way. So yeah, the documentation of her story shows, as I said, her story, her side, the rise and fall and rise of her from like being a pop star. And I don't want to go into too much detail, so you can still watch the documentation without me spoiling everything. But just to get the context, it's important to have some key points along the way that I will talk about, but not in depth. So yeah, we all know she started as a Spice Girl. In the documentation, we see what happened before that, her childhood, but let her tell the story. That's not that important for today's episode here on One Week at a Time. But then she became a Spice Girls. The Spice Girls separated at one point, and she was like, yeah, a footballer's wife. That's all she was. And people made fun of her. She was a fancy figure people are looking and laughing at. And that was not something she was used to be. And probably it didn't feel quite good either. But anyways, she decided she wants to work in fashion. Fashion was always her thing. Like Posh Spice didn't come from nothing. There's a reason she was called the posh one. And she wanted to make a career in this, even though she had no clue how to start it. And she found a mentor and she started designing her own line. And in the beginning, there were people saying like, well, her mentor designed these dresses and she's just advertising them as hers. And yeah, she had to really learn everything the hard way, and no one really gave her credit for the hard work she already took in at that time. And what I found super cute is when she did her shows, she always invited Anna Wintour, which we all know from the American Vogue. And she never showed up, never, until one point. And today in the Netflix docu, you can see Anna Wintour being interviewed in this documentation, which I love, which shows if you stay consistent, if you stay persistent, the person you always wanted to have as a guest on your show might become a closer person in your life one day if you put in the work and if you stay continuous. Well, and it took a long while until the business really set foot and really worked. The numbers were, let's say, bad for quite some time. And one day she found a business partner that worked with her and that rebuilt the whole structure because, as she says in her documentation, she never went to business school. Like, we've all seen her way. She was a pop star and she came from this world and had to learn everything, how to have a business, how to build a business, how to manage a business by herself while she was already doing it. And that's a tough thing to do. I think a lot of people that come from a complete different background would have to learn that. I can only speak for myself. Like, I come from the health system and I'm self-employed now, aiming to be an entrepreneur. And it's a learning curve you have to go through because in the beginning, no one tells you how things work. You have to learn, you have to read, you have to sometimes fall on your nose and stand up again and say, okay, this is something I learned something from. And she had to do that the hard way. No one sees it when you see this person today, but it was really a rough way she took. So with that said, I can really recommend the documentation. I did like it very much, and I think I will watch it again sometime. But with that, let's come to the 3 points that stood out for me the most. And the first one is, don't be afraid to show up. People might be laughing at you. If you, for example, want to be visible and talk into a camera, because when you market your product or whatsoever, it often comes with a presence in front of the camera. And people might think like, oh, who does she think she is? Why is she doing that? This is so weird to see this person on camera right now. And they might misunderstand you and they might underestimate you and they might not see what you see. But let them be wrong about you. You are the one who knows what you're doing, why you're doing it. And you know you're learning. Every day you show up doing what you want to do, you learn. And you're very lucky if you have a partner, a family, or friends that might not even, maybe not even completely understand what you're doing, but that have your back, that know you for who you are, besides all the voices that may come from any side talking about you. And remember this, you will grow stronger. With every day you show up, no matter if people are talking or not, you grow stronger. You know better what to do. You will feel more confident in your own skin, doing what you do, and learn from that. And one day they will come to you and ask how you did it. You will be interviewed. You will be asked questions from people you meet that want to know how you did it. And you can tell them all the way and all the things that you did to get to that point where you are at that day. And the second point is, elegance is more than just fashion. As I said in the beginning, she was rocking this black hoodie. There was no print on it, no nothing. And she was the elegance in person. So it doesn't really come to what you're wearing. It's more about what you do, how you behave, how you show up. And we can learn that. We can learn to behave differently. For me, it's a way of talking, for example. I'm trying to swear and curse as little as possible. Sometimes some words slip out. Sometimes I need to say certain things to give them the intensity I want to bring up. But usually I'm trying really not to swear or to talk bad about someone or to just be a negative person, but rather to live up to being a positive person, to seeing the bright side of life, to looking in this direction. There are days and moments where I completely fail at this, but it's always like reminding yourself, okay, yesterday was what was yesterday, and today I will show up in a different way. And maybe it's a roller coaster and some days work better than others, but the more we train that, I think the better we get at it. And that's the question we can ask ourselves. How do we as a person, or maybe as a business, because sometimes they work together when we're a personal brand, how do we want to be perceived? How do we want that another person looks at us and thinks, oh, she is probably like this and that? In the end, other people are only assuming and they only see fractions of what we really are. But that's life. You will never ever have a person that has a full picture of you. Your partner will see you different than your mom, than your best friend, than your coworker. This is always a gap. But you can think in your head, what is it that I want to be seen as, and try to do your best to always bring this up to the table. And sometimes just ask the questions like, do I dress accordingly? If I want to be perceived in a certain way and I look completely the other way, maybe there's a gap and maybe that won't work. Or maybe I want to behave in a certain way and I do completely the opposite. And I know that maybe this might fire back at some point and this will not work out the way I want it to. And you can always work with role models. For me, one of those role models is Victoria, as I said. When it comes to elegance, she is one of the persons, I think I have two in mind. One of the person I have in mind when I think about elegance, behaving elegant, and just being elegant. And fun fact, I was in London last year, but the year before, and was at Madame Tussauds and took a picture with Victoria Beckham. And I was so happy about it, even though if it was just her wax figure, but standing beside the real sized one and like seeing like, okay, this is her and I can stand next to her was a really interesting thing for me. I don't know if you can understand what I want to say with that, but if you have met your star, even as a wax figure or from afar, it makes something with you and you can channel things better, I think. Does that make sense? Well, that's me at least. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves, that's the third key, that it's a marathon, not a sprint. And the biggest question when it comes to this is to keep in mind why. What is the big why? You are doing what you're doing. You are going in the direction you want to go. You are building what you want to build, whether it's a business, a family, a friendship, a life in general, all these things. What's the why? And then when there comes these bumps in the road and you're like really put into question, is this really what you want? And life asks you that in all of its ways. Then you can always remind yourself, yes, this is why I want it, no matter how hard the way it is. I want to go up to that top and enjoy the view and remind myself when I look back that it was me, myself, that climbed up all this way and I earned it. And now it's so nice to see the view. Speaking of metaphor. And oftentimes we overestimate what we can achieve in a year and we underestimate what we can achieve in 10 years. So you think next year you will be probably way farther down the road than you actually are. But if you think in the long game, you will look back and think, oh my goodness, this is 10 years. Look how far I've come. And this is the picture I really like, because sometimes we only see the short run, the short distance, and think we will never reach our goal. This is so hard. And honestly speaking, when I look at my life, I didn't think 10 years back that I would be able to A, be self-employed, and B, living in Spain, being self-employed. When I was working as a geriatric nurse, this was my horizon. I was dreaming and living in another country would be fun, stuff like that. But this was never really a thing. I thought that me, Vanessa, would be able to do that. That was just not existing. And now looking back, and it's not even 10 years, it's so nice to see, and it makes me proud when I think about that, what I was able to achieve. And I think you probably can do the same. When you look back and you build something over time, it's sometimes so nice to realize that this was actually your work. So give yourself credit for that. And never give up. Never give up. Always stay continuous. So yeah, this woman really went through a lot. And guess what? She's still standing. She's a tough one. Yes, maybe every day is not sunshine and rainbows and flowers, but that's life, I guess. And it took her 20 years to be where she is today, speaking about everything that she went through and built. And despite all the negative feedback she received, and it was really not that nice. When you watch the documentation, you will know what I mean. She never gave up. She always continued going forward. She did the work, she showed up, and in the end, it paid off. So I think there's hope for all of us. If we stay continuous and if we show up and if we never, ever, ever give up, I'm so sure it will pay off. So why don't we all surprise ourselves and look back at this day in 2045, in 20 years, and remind ourselves how far we've come? I like the idea. Yeah, I find it cute. With that, I thank you for sharing your time. Let me know if you've seen the documentation. What are your thoughts? Do you think the same, or did something else stood out to you and something else running your mind by now? Let's share this in the comments. And if you have someone that wants to watch the documentation or is a Victoria Beckham fan or actually just needs to hear the message of consistency, feel free to send this episode to them. This will help spread this podcast and make it accessible for more people. And as I said, I thank you for your time. I wish you a beautiful week ahead and see you next week. Bye bye.